doll, by its very nature, is designed for children. To some it's just a toy, to others it's a comfort, sometimes even a best friend. But what if the limp, motionless body your child carries around with them isn't so lifeless after all? What if the item they hold tightly at night for protection houses something darker and more sinister than we could ever imagine? A force that is both indiscriminate and a very real danger to life. Over the years, many cases of haunted objects have been reported. In 90% of these cases, the object in question is a doll. Could this be our human subconscious trying to give an inanimate object personality to make them seem more human? Or is it that in some sinister world, a doll with its lifelike, innocent characteristics make it the perfect vessel for a dark entity to conceal itself within, while being able to get inseparably close to our most vulnerable and innocent, our children? Annabelle, the entity said to reside inside this Raggedy Ann doll, is truly dark and hell-bent on causing harm to whoever it encounters. A large part of Annabelle's history is unknown, but what we do know is the doll was a gift brought from a second-hand hobby store. She was purchased by her mother for her daughter, Donna, as a birthday present in 1970. Donna was studying to become a nurse and lived with her friend Angie. Both the girls took a real shine to the doll, especially Donna. She allowed it to sleep on her bed, totally oblivious to the evil that lay within. Before long though, strange things started to happen. Items would seem to appear in different places to where they were last left. One of these items being Annabelle herself. At first, Donna and Angie both thought that they were just being forgetful. However, as time went on, they started to question what was happening. One person who sensed that there was something evil about the doll was Donna and Angie's friend, Lou. He said from the start that the doll was possessed and something had to be done about her. Over the coming weeks, strange activities seemed to happen more and more frequently. It became more obvious that something was amiss with Annabelle. She seemed to move constantly as soon as Donna was out of eyeshot. These movements were followed with notes appearing in strange places. Stranger still was what was written on the notes, most of which read, "Help us," or "Help Lou." The notes looked to be written in a child's handwriting on old parchment-style paper, a style of paper that neither Donna or Angie had access to. The girls thought this was just somebody playing a prank, until Donna came home one day to find the Raggedy Ann doll sat on her bed with blood on the back of her hand and 3 spots of blood upon her chest. This development created a lot of panic and unanswered questions. Whose blood was it? How did it settle on the doll? Does the doll bleed? The friends decided the best course of action was to contact a medium. The medium conducted a séance and claimed to have contacted the spirit of a young 7-year-old girl called Annabelle Higgins. She claimed Annabelle told her she had died on the very grounds on which the apartment was built, many years before, when the land was just open fields that she used to play in. She said she moved the doll and other items just to make contact with Donna and Angie, as she was lonely and felt close to them. She claimed that she just wanted to be loved, and asked if she moved into the doll's vessel, if the girls would look after her. Both of the girls quickly agreed to this and pledged to look after the young Annabelle Higgins, and renamed the doll Annabelle shortly after. Perhaps this is because Donna and Angie were both nurses and spent so much of their life witnessing suffering and giving compassion, or perhaps there was an overwhelming force controlling them that they didn't realise. Either way, it was this naive move that put their lives in extreme danger.
God does not allow the spirit of a child to go into a doll. This was a demon who was posing as that little child to create sympathy to these two young women, which it did. Now this was no longer a doll. This was a child. They would take it for rides. They'd talk to it. Mm-hmm. They'd buy clothing for it, jewelry. They treated it just as though it was that little girl who was killed, Annabelle. Now they were giving it a lot of recognition. Soon after the first seance, things would happen in their house, what we refer to as infestation. There'd be knocking sounds. They'd see flashing lights in their bedroom at night, shooting across the room. The bed would shake a little bit. It would get icy cold. They'd hear whispering, which we call magic whispering. Now, from time to time, these girls would change shifts, but they were getting a little scared now. So they decided to stay on the same shift all the time, 4 to 12. They'd leave the doll in the bedroom. They'd come home after midnight, put the key in the door, unlock the door, and who do you think is standing there? The Raggedy Ann doll. Now that doll has flimsy legs. Yeah. If you try to stand it up, you can't. But I've seen that doll stand. I've seen a lot of things happen around that doll.
It wasn't long after this seance that the physical attacks began. They seemed to circulate around the girl's friend Lou. It started with bad reoccurring dreams about the Raggedy Ann doll. One night, Lou woke up in a panic after one of these dreams, but when his eyes focused down towards his feet, he saw the Annabelle doll rising and hovering over his body, floating towards his head. He was frozen in fear as the doll's arms lifted to rest against either side of his neck. He recalled it feeling like an electric charge running around his throat. He was being strangled. He tried to move, but he couldn't. As he felt death approaching, Annabelle disappeared. Was this a warning to Lou? Was it because the evil entity knew he sensed its presence and didn't believe the story about the young girl? Whatever the reason, the attacks continued, and they continued to focus on Lou. One day, shortly after Lou and Angie were reading over maps while planning a trip, they heard noises coming from Donna's room. So loud they suspected someone had broken in. They went to investigate what was going on. As Lou approached the door, the room went silent. He opened the door and turned on the light. As he looked around, he saw no one was there. No one except Annabelle. She was on the floor in the corner of the room. As he approached her, he felt as if someone was standing behind him. He turned and suddenly felt an overwhelming pain in his chest. He looked down and saw blood filling his shirt. He ran out of the room, back into the kitchen, where he removed his shirt and saw 7 claw-like scratches were present upon his chest. 3 that went down his chest vertically and 4 that went across horizontally. The marks looked as if they were burnt into his skin. The marks mysteriously disappeared a few days later. However, this was enough to convince them to contact a priest they knew called Father Hegan. Father Hegan, concerned that he was out of his depths and hearing what had happened, decided to contact Father Cook straight away, as well as Ed and Lorraine Warren. An exorcism was performed, and Ed and Lorraine Warren took Annabelle with them at the request of Donna. Things soon returned to normal for Donna, Angie and Lou, but the curse of Annabelle continues to this present day.
I not only have the doll, I have film, I have recordings, I have eyewitness accounts from credible people who have seen these phenomena happen in and around that doll. A priest comes to my home one day, young fella, has his rectory right here in Connecticut. Ed, I'd like to take you and Lorraine for a ride in my new car. Very proud of it. We went with him. When he took us back, he said, what about this doll everybody's talking about? Because we had shown it on Channel 18, on a TV show we're on. Could I see it? I understand it puts slashes on people. I brought him into the museum. It's in a chair. He looks at it, just like the guy in Hartford. He walks right over to it, never said a word, picked it up and threw it right across the room. God is more powerful than a devil. I said, yes, Father. God is more powerful than millions of devils. But he wasn't. He found that out. Less than an hour later, driving home on Route 84, his brand new car went out of control. Half of his car was sheared off by a tractor-trailer truck. He should have been killed, but he lived. God will only let the devil go so far. The last thing he remembered seeing was the image of that doll. A group of college students came one day. One of them said this is nothing but a bunch of bunk. I don't believe in it. Went over to the Raggedy Ann doll, which is in a case, knocking on it. He said, this doll can't do anything. I dare it right now to put slashes on me. I put him out of the building. Less than 3 hours later, that boy was dead. His girlfriend, who had been with him on a motorcycle, said he was laughing about the doll, smashed into a tree, head on, was killed instantly. His girlfriend was in a hospital for over a year.